Okay, so our next review of the day is going to be for the animated series Creature Commandos, which is on Max right now. This is from the creative mind of James Gunn. This is part of his venture into the DC universe there. He's, like I said, he took over as head of DC film studios there with that. So he's doing this whole creative thing with the Suicide Squad.
Technically, the debut.
The Suicide well, he actually took the job after Suicide Squad, so I guess, yeah,
Yeah, I
he's
think Peacemaker was also made, or at least filmed for sure, before he took that job.
yeah, so I guess this is, like, I guess his first thing since he's gotten that job, you're right, so this may be the first thing he's done there, and so far, I mean, with part of the DC stuff that James Gunn's done, people received it pretty positively, people love the Suicide Squad, people enjoyed, what was the other thing he's done there?
Yeah, the
Peacemaker
Peacemaker. Yeah.
Peacemaker, people did enjoy that,
Technically, the Penguin was released, even though he didn't personally have anything to do with it. It was released as the under the new DC Studios label as well.
So you got that going. So a lot of people looking at DC now, like, oh well, they kind of on a little bit of a streak now. They coming up with some good stuff. People did love the Penguin, like you said, even though that James Gunn wasn't directly involved in that. That's still, I guess that counts towards him. He gets little points towards him for that. So I was like,
He
hey,
gets a paycheck from it at least.
gets a paycheck from it there. So yeah, a lot of people going like, oh, okay, DC's doing some kind of interesting things over there, and this may be adding to it. So you got Creature Commandos here, where you got a ragtag group of misfits there. No, it's not the Suicide Squad. It's different. It's Creature Commandos
Much
here,
older, actually.
much older there, of all these kind of different people. 'Cause so you see in this Amanda Waller, who's still leading the team. She's still in charge of these people. Still basically the same concept here. You got this group of people. They're led by a military person, Rick Flag Sr. in this, who's the father of Rick Flag Jr., which was played by Joel Kinnaman in Suicide Squad. But this time around, because I guess there was she got in trouble there by the government. They said you can't actually use humans for these type of things, that you can't implant bombs into humans' heads and then threaten to explode them if they don't follow orders. Uh,
Which is a direct response to the ending of Peacemaker as well.
oh yes, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so it's ending there with Peacemaker. So in this, it's like, well, the loophole she's going to do is like, well, these people aren't technically human, so we can actually use them. So you got people like the Bride, who people, obviously famous literary character Mary Shelley's Frankenstein there, and then also, so addition there that Dr. Frankenstein actually wanted to come up with a partner for Frankenstein to be with Frankenstein's monster, and then you have the Bride there. You have Sean Gunn, who's the brother of James Gunn, who basically is in every single James Gunn project.
He's
Hey,
getting to play a lot of characters.
yeah, because he does double duty. He's both the Weasel and he's GI Robot in this. You have Alan Tudyk in this, who voices Dr. Fostress in there. Also, he comes in some other characters like Clayface in this
Yeah.
as well. You got Zoe Chow, who comes in as Nina there, who's the woman there who's can breathe underwater there, very much shape of water type, not mermaid, but kind of fish creature that you have.
Yeah.
Uh, and then, like you mentioned, Rick Flag Sr., who's the kind of field commander there for the team. So that kind of basically rounds them out there. So we talked about it, with the trailer for this is that, okay, how many times can James Gunn go back to the well of a group of misfits, outcasts, join together there to accomplish a mission? Like I said, he did it in Suicide Squad. He did it with Guardians of the Galaxy. He did it with Peacemaker. He's doing it with this. How many times can you keep going back to the well and it be successful? And I guess, well, I guess as many times as he wants. I mean, I think this is still pretty a solid outing from him again. And the whole goal of this team is that they're on a duty to protect the princess there of this country. What was the name of the country again that she was?
Pakolistan, I believe.
Macolistan. She was the princess there. So yeah.
I think it might be setting things up for the whole Gem World universe, which is, I mean, that's its own rabbit hole to get into. But there's some common imagery and amethysts on the uniforms that make me think that's kind of where they're going in the future.
Mm, okay. So yeah. So that's kind of their mission. They're trying to protect the princess from Cersei there, the witch from the mascara who's out to kill her. Yeah. So that's kind of basic setup. Uh Sage, what are your thoughts on Creature Commandos there?
Well, I think just to because to kind of almost respond to the question that you asked in terms of like how many times can he go back to the idea of a group of misfits. I think what makes this one, I feel like I think it breaks from the formula of Guardians and Suicide Squad that James Gunn has done, I think in two big ways. One is that I feel like, and some people might even say this as a criticism of the show, but I actually liked this. For me, it's a positive. But the show kind of throughout the whole thing is its plot is very secondary. Like they do tie up a plot by the end of the show, but it feels very secondary to almost just each episode being like a character vignette and being really a lot more character heavy than story or plot heavy. And so that does to me make it feel a bit different from some of the other things that he's done, where you ultimately have this team in Guardians or Suicide Squad. They come together, they accomplish this big thing, they have this huge plot resolution. But here they kind of tiptoe around the plot for most of these episodes. Like half of each episode is a backstory, and the other half being in the present with kind of focusing more on whichever character is getting that backstory. But even in the present parts of it, it tends to be more about just getting into a character's headspace for each episode. So I thought that was really interesting and kind of refreshing for like a comic book adaptation thing where it's like we're almost kind of the plot's kind of secondary here. Like we're not here for that. We're just here to explore some of these characters and maybe set them up for parts going into the universe maybe later down the line. And the other thing that I think kind of breaks the mold a little bit here, breaks the pattern for James Gunn, is in each of those team stories, they really, these teams, they're misfits, right? They're outcasts, but they find a family in each other and they really come together for something greater in the ends of each of those stories. But here, I feel like they kind of remain at arm's length the entire time. Like these characters really don't coalesce into some great teamwork or some great accomplishment as this goes on. They really kind of stay almost isolated from each other in a way. And I also think that was a really interesting, different way to do this sort of team story.
Mm. Yeah, you bring up that point. Good point there, because you see something like obviously with Guardians there, they all become basically like a family, in Guardians, especially, towards the third film there. So you got, 3 films to really build that kind of connection, that relationship there. You see that. Suicide Squad there, they get closer. I wouldn't say as close as something like in, the Guardians films there, but they do get kind of close with that. And, they do something big and grand in that and, like, kinda reveal themselves to be better because they, save the world, basically in that, by
They
killing.
kind of still become superheroes a little bit in that
Yeah.
in that one.
They still become superheroes in that one. Peacemaker, they save the world in that one too because yeah, they stopped that whole thing, so the alien
He was the
invasion.
one person that was still like a bad guy in Suicide Squad, and then in his spinoff, he's like, nah, he's kind of comes around on that.
Yeah, so that even kinda comes I mean, especially compared to who his dad I mean, he's got the T-1000 who's his dad, so he comes off as,
The
way better.
T-1000, that's also part of the KKK.
Yeah, so, he comes off as way better there, and they kinda get kinda close there a little bit at working together, but yeah, here you mentioned, yeah, they kinda keep an arm's length from each other, these kind of people, and each episode, almost you get to see the backstory of each character, and each character's backstory is more tragic than the next almost, and of course, on par with James Gunn, these people, you get to reveal it's like, well, they aren't they everybody's got a story of why they kinda turned out the way they turned out, and each one's more sad than the next. So you see that and how they kind of ended up in this situation of being in this government facility, which kind of makes you feel for them there, seeing it. So you got that. I did think the bride and Nina, I think that's the closest relationship you get
Yeah,
in it. Yeah.
and even that being the case, there's still kind of a turn it takes where I won't spoil it because it's the very ending, but it does it take kind of a turn where it's like maybe that didn't maybe that wasn't a great thing, but they grew closer.
No. And with this one, this series is only 7 episodes you got here, which is kind of I don't know. We talked about that. Maybe it was because just the budget of it. Maybe they're just like, okay, maybe we only got just enough story for 7. And I think, here they don't do anything as well. I guess you could say in a way they do kind of it's a where the way it turns out, I won't spoil it, but a little bit of a in the world type of situation they kind of do here too. There. But yeah. Did you feel good with the 7 episodes? Do you think that was enough to tell the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would feel so. I would say no if it felt like the show was more about its plot and more about trying to tell some bigger story and resolve it. But I think it being the length it was worked really well for the more character vignette style they went for.
Mm, okay. Yeah. And for you, who was kind of one of the better characters there that kind of rises above there?
Personally, my favorite, I think, out of all of them was Dr. Phosphorus, and I would say that because they really let him be a villain and stay a villain. I earlier on another conversation I was having, we were talking about the Suicide Squad movie, and I think that the James Gunn Suicide Squad is very good. But if there's one thing I had to pick at it and go like, I don't love this about it, it's that these villains kind of still end up being heroes at the end of the day, which is not necessarily true to the Suicide Squad of the comics. But I actually think this show maybe stayed a little closer to the spirit of what I would expect from a Suicide Squad comic. And I think Dr. Phosphorus maybe nails that down the best because he does not feel like there is a redemption anywhere around the corner for him. I mean, even like when he is, kind of trying to support someone at one point, like right after he says that, he turns to someone else and goes like, did it sound like I gave a shit? Like he really feels like a bad guy through and through and stays that way even with the tragic backstory. And I really appreciated that aspect of it.
Mm. And this is the comics right here that you see of there. And you said you're familiar with the comics there. That
So I've never really read the Creature Commandos comics. What I have read personally is when they kind of around 2011, 2012, they did the big New 52 relaunch at DC, and one of the many comics in that kind of category or library was it was Creature Commandos presents Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, and it was this very it was kind of like a modern take on some Creature Commandos stuff. So I've read some of that, and that was a very different Frankenstein than the one that we see in the show. He's much more like a very honorable, like almost Arthurian knight type personality. And then that bleeds over into the Justice League Dark comics that also came from the New 52 era. And I read a lot of that. I think I read all of the Justice League Dark series that they did. And so there's some Creature Commandos elements that come up in that book as well. And then, that was also at the time where like the Frankenstein comic got canceled. It wasn't one of the more popular ones. And as often is the case with DC, a book gets canceled, and then the character from that book will start doing guest appearances everywhere in like every other comic. So there was like a year or two where like Frankenstein was in like every single DC book published.
mm. And Frankenstein is in this, who's voiced by David Harbour. In this, there people might know obviously Stranger Things there, and then also he was Hellboy as well.
Or
So
Red Guardian.
Red Guardian there.
I think this is his best comic book like superhero character that he's gotten to do because I haven't been a huge fan of any of the stuff he's had a chance to be in yet, but I think this is the one that has worked the best.
Oh yeah, I think this is definitely one of the better ones that he's kind of done here, and he's like I said, everybody. I mean, he's the big comic relief of the show. I guess you'd say there for him. I mean, when he kind of comes in, his whole deal is he's been stalking the bride for centuries. You see a whole montage of him constantly trying to follow her, find her there. After you see the origin story, what happened with the bride and where that kind of went down. So yeah, you see that he's just held this kind of long held obsession with her. I think he provides some of the best comedic moments in the show.
Never would have thought I'd heard Frankenstein say the word DILF ever until now.
So I loved what David Harbour did with a lot of his performance there, which I thought was really good.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm totally with you, and I think it's a case. It's one of those cases where it's kind of nothing like the Frankenstein as far as the personality goes that exists in DC that I've read. But despite that, despite it being this completely different personality and take on the character, I thought it worked really, really well.
yeah. And to speak about Dr. Phosphorus, who I said is voiced by Alan Tudyk. And another thing there to note about this, because people also, of course, like anything comes out, people are like, oh, the live action, what if this gets brought to live action there? And people are trying to fan cast the people there, these characters. But I think the big thing is that James Gunn was like, it's gonna be all connected. So whoever voices the characters in the show or in these anime things are also gonna play them in live action. That's another thing too. So you got
Yeah,
Alan Tudyk there who shows up as Dr. Phosphorus. And don't you think they would kind of do a little thing there, a little bit of soft side because he's got the stuff he's playing with the little kid, like he's still got, with the kids kind of thing there a little bit.
he does a little bit, but even in those flashbacks, you see him murder other people's children. So he's like, he really like it's like this kid looks like the kid that I used to have, so I'll be a little nice with this one, but he's still gonna kill like other kids. So
And I was kinda wondering about his powers because it's something like he'll just touch people and they burn, but then I guess other people he just like he's playing with the little girl, he's throwing it up as like he's not burning her. So I guess can he like turn it on and off or something? Or
I'm assuming, yeah, I'm assuming that he can just kind of control it.
okay. I was like, all right.
Um, yeah, I mean, he probably didn't could he. I'm guessing it was one of those things like Doctor Manhattan, where it's like he couldn't at first, but over time he kind of learned to control like what he is and is not doing. He gets a bite on the arm at one point, and that's the only time he seemed to burn something like without trying to. But it was also because the teeth were penetrating the skin, so it was like whatever energy was like inside of him that was coming out there. So
Yeah. And we come some standout characters in this, is, James Gunn's very good ensemble cast, and we've seen him many times. If I had to say, one of the kind of two of the standouts for me, The Bride I really liked. I really liked The Bride,
yeah,
in
yeah, I
this. I
thought
think,
she was great too.
Indria, Verma is,
Yeah, I'm sure people have seen her. She was like, she was the I don't know, remember if they were married or just had a very close relationship, but she was the kind of lover to Pedro Pascal's the Red Viper character in Game of Thrones.
yep. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, that's one of the bigger things she was on. She was on that one. But she's
She's
been
also in that Obi-Wan show.
Oh, she's in okay. But yeah, she was also in that I know her a little bit more from that Idris Elba show. She was in Luther. She was the wife of
Oh yeah, okay.
she was his wife there. But yeah, she's got a long career. She's been in a bunch of stuff. A bunch of TV stuff. Mostly like if you watch BBC TV, she'll usually pop up in a lot of the BBC shows there. She'll do that one. But yeah, she shows up here. Uh,
And looking at pictures of the actress, I think she's got a great physical, like you can see, I think, very similarity in the facial structure and like the shape of the chin and cheekbones to the way the bride is drawn in the animation.
Yeah, because I'm looking at a picture right now because this was like the very early concept, I guess, of Creature Commandos. Because you see, like some of these characters don't look like they look when the actual show. Because like for this example,
Mm.
like the bride doesn't look anything like she does when the actual show came out.
Yeah,
Uh,
that must have just been their like kind of
or
pitch artwork.
yeah, same
Dr.
thing with
Phosphorus isn't even the same color.
yeah, he's not the same color. Nina, her face looks different in the show there. So this is like the very early thing there, for
Yeah.
that show. But this is the actress right here who voices her, right here. So yeah, you can see a little bit of a similarity there. What they actually do with the face there with the bride. But yeah, so it's kind of a little bit other than Rick Flag. She kind of is seems like a little bit more the force of the team, leader of the team there. Besides
Yeah.
Rick Flag, you kind of see there. Um, I also really love Nina. Nina, who's the
Mm-hmm.
fish woman. She kind of comes in really well there. And she's voiced by, let me see if I can pull up the name of that actress there who voices Nina. But she also has, um, maybe besides for Dr. Foster's, for me, kind of one of the saddest backstories, I think, there for me. But yeah,
Yeah,
I love
I think the most tragic because she's truly the one that I mean, I guess you could say the same about Weasel, but she really feels like she did nothing. She didn't do anything wrong. Like someone like Dr. Phosphorus did something bad and then it bit him on the ass and it just escalated. But she really did nothing. Like didn't do nothing to nobody.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you see with her backstory, she was born with a deformity, where her lungs were outside her body, which actually really does happen to some people there, some babies there. And then so her dad decides, hey, I'm gonna, hey, this is my child, I'm gonna help her, keep her alive there. And then, like most scientists, it's like, well, I got this genius idea. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna infuse fish DNA because fishes, and do that, and then actually turns her into one where she can't actually breathe air. She can only breathe water there. Which, hey, I mean, she's not wearing, I mean, hey, she's breathing some way, so she's got that kinda
Yeah,
going for her there. Instead of just walking around as a little girl with an iron lung on her, she's got that, so, I guess in some ways he did it, but yeah, I mean, she just really just didn't do anything really. I mean, she just was kinda just living her life, and then the Argus and government just kinda swooped her up, and then also you see that what happened to her father afterwards, it's like, that was also really very sad, so I thought, yeah, that was pretty tragic.
the one thing that I will pick at that episode just a little bit in that backstory is it felt it just seemed weird to me that the dad was like, I'll send you to public school and I'm sure it'll be great and no one will like has this guy ever been around children before? Like does he just have no concept of was he ever a kid at one point? Did he really didn't think, oh, I wonder if they might be mean to her because she's different? Like that just never entered his mind. I thought that was a little surprising.
Yeah. Well, I guess he gives a good explanation. He's like, "Well, she's gotta learn to be around other people sometime." You know what I mean? Like, I
I
guess,
mean, that's true. It just seems like maybe a more specialized experience maybe would have been smarter. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess in this way, I guess you could have sent her to more of like I don't know what the equivalent of like well, you could send her to Doom Patrol. You could have put her ass with them people.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah. Like,
There's a school for people that have some, strange things about them. Why not look for one of those? We know
yeah.
it exists. They're establishing a lot of this DC universe is just already in motion, and origin stories have already happened, and this is just a mythology and an alternate history that we're exploring a little bit at a time. So one of those places has to have existed already.
Yeah. And Zoe Chow is the one who voices Nina in there. Who voices her. So yeah, that was really good. Yeah. So what would you say? Any weak spots with this show at all?
Um, I mean, like I said, I think that other people will probably carry a criticism of there wasn't that much of a plot or story accomplished over the course of it. Um, that to me isn't so much of a complaint from me, but I could see that being something for other people that like, oh, it was just mostly backstories and then it was over. I kind of like that about it. I actually is a positive, but I can see where that other people might dislike that. Um, and yeah, I mean, like I think you get a lot of good backstories, a lot of good character work here. Um, but also, yeah, I can't say that it necessarily like totally blew my mind or like had any sort of like, oh wow, I've never seen that ever before. It's got a great style and I think it's got really strong characters, but I will say that not having as much of a plot does keep it from being maybe as ambitious as it could be. But I think it's also just okay to do stuff that's not as ambitious, and I think that's fine.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's not like you said, it's not anything groundbreaking or anything like that. When it comes to I guess superhero, especially just talking about the realm of animated stuff there, and people are comparing this a little bit because this also came out around the same like What If.
Mm,
It's a lot more fun to watch than something like What If, and it's got a lot more creativity than something like What If there, even if it is doing like, hey, going back to the well of outcast misfit characters there. But the characters have a lot of personality and they got a lot of
yeah,
personality. The voice work is really good with them. You're interested to see these characters when you learn more about them and to see how they're kind of maybe going to get out of the situation. So it's got that kinda going for it. And so I think that, just to compare both things because 'cause they're around the same time there. If you're already a fan of superhero stuff, or, just superhero stuff or anime stuff in general, this might be in your bag there. if you're just kind of fatigued with superhero stuff in general, is this really gonna change your mind on things? Like, even if it is good? Probably not. Like, I wouldn't probably if somebody goes like, "I'm just really burnt out on superhero stuff," like, I don't know, like, maybe something like The Boys would be better for people who are burnt out on
Yeah,
it.
I think so.
Like, that would kinda be more something for people who go like, "Okay, I'm kinda burnt out on it." But no, but this is kinda really good and, you might wanna check it out there even if you are burnt out on superhero stuff.
Right.
Even this there. But people might I don't know, some people might like the absurdity of it, the brutalness of it there, with these characters, like, some characters, like you said, do remain kinda dirtbags there, all the way to the end. Uh, so, yeah, even, like, like I said, the bride, I mean, she really doesn't seem like she really deserves to be there, really. She's not really a straight villain, really. I mean,
No, I mean they're really just they're people that a lot of these characters really were just kind of taken prisoner because they're not human. Because
yeah,
oh look, a monster, let's contain it more than anything.
yeah. And then for people also who wanted to watch it just for if you just wanna, watch it to see where this lands in kind of the DC universe, anything like that, like, there are for people who are obsessed with that, the Easter eggs and cameos, there is Batman who does show up for a brief glimpse and the Dr. Phosphorus thing, there. Did you catch any, like, big kinda Easter eggs or anything like that that was kind of annoying to you or kinda, like, too on the
And yeah,
nose?
no, I actually thought they were pretty good about it. I thought it worked. Whatever they did show worked pretty well. I like that. I mean, the Batman you see is pretty silhouetted. You get kind of a look at him at like in terms of like the physical build and kind of the more tanky look that he's got. But it's pretty silhouetted. I think they're good about not going too far into it. Um, I will say, and this is one thing, and maybe this might be a nitpick for people. I don't know if how hardcore of a DC fan you have to be to care about this, but I did think that the depiction of the Rupert Thorne character felt kind of out of character for what that character is supposed to be like. He's like he's another crime boss character uh, from Gotham City. And like if you watched a lot of the Batman animated series, you might remember Rupert Thorne being a major antagonist in that show. And he he's a very in those shows and in the comics I've read with this character, he's very smart. He's much more subtle. He's much more manipulative. Kind of pushes. He's an awful person, right? He's a total dirtbag. But when he screws people over, they don't always know it's him that's doing it. He's much more careful about who he's seen with and what he's physically himself doing. Like Batman, actually, in the animated series, he has to work to catch Rupert Thorne in the act of something. And in this show, and I get that it's also very fast, very flashback heavy, so you really got to get through the boss versus origin and kind of make it happen. But Rupert Thorne just being right there in person, going like, throw him in the tank, and getting right in his face, and that didn't really feel like that character to me. It felt like that could have just been any mob boss. So I kind of wish that maybe wasn't Rupert Thorne that they used in that moment, just because I feel like he's a character with a little more tact and subtlety to him. But
Mm, okay, yeah. And you mentioned, like I said, the Batman kinda he comes in, you see, like, just a little glimpse, a quick glimpse of it, and then people freak, "Oh my god, it's Batman!" People freaking out. I'm like, "Oh, Batman," you only see, like, literally 2 seconds of Batman, everybody going, "Who's gonna be Batman?" It's like, bro. Um,
it's probably not even really any indication of how Batman will look when we do get him.
yeah, I think there's a rumor that got put out, like, they were looking at Josh Brolin or something like that. I think a rumor got put out there.
There's going to be so many rumors until it happens. It's going to be one of those things people just do not stop talking about.
So yeah, so there's gonna be tons of speculation on that. But yeah, I mean, if you're into that type of thing, hunting those Easter eggs and things like that, it's maybe in there for you. But yeah, like I said, James Gunn's got a real talent and knack for this. And I mean, some people might be tired of it already, of kind of his thing there. Maybe go, he's going to the well again of like the whole kind of thing I mentioned with the Outcast cast of characters brought together, form a team, accomplish a mission.
Yeah.
Some people might be tired of that already, but yeah, I mean, he still does a good job with it here. And I like, these characters, like all of them. I think I like how all they interact with each other. Like I said, they all do. It is treated like vignettes there of all these characters' kind of backstories, and I think that is kind of interesting. The animation I think is good. I think the action is good. I think the voice performances are good in here. It's humorous when it very needs to be, very much in the Gunn way that it can be, violent in the way that James Gunn stuff can be. That kind of works well. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, will he stretch himself too thin to a point there where he's doing some of these projects and being a part of it? We'll see with that. Even though I mean he's the creator of it, but I think the showrunner of it is a guy named Dean Lorry, who's the showrunner
Mm.
of it there. So he's kind of the more day to day guy of things there. Um, for me, I'd give this a tune in. I give it a good tune in. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right in the same spot, like a strong tune in. Not quite, not quite edging up to a peak, but just because I didn't think it was groundbreaking or did anything like really, really wowing. But I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's well written. I think the characters do have gravitas to them. I think they feel like they matter, and it. I think James Gunn, for as much as people complain about like, I think a lot of like the Marvel films and being maybe kind of too on the bounce, like too far on the side of like humor all the time. I think the James Gunn Marvel films were always actually did a good job of that balance and knowing when to be serious and drop the humor. And I think that shows well here too. It's not jokey just 100% of the time, even though it can be very funny. I think he knows how to treat a serious moment seriously and allow those that the breathing room for those things. So I think it's pretty successful on that front. And yeah, like I said, I think it breaks the mold a little bit on the team thing by doing the vignette thing and by having the plot kind of almost be secondary to the character work. So it feels still unique. It doesn't just feel like a carbon copy of those other things that he's done. And we also, it helps knowing that Superman being the next thing from him is going to be a totally different style of story, a totally different format where it is a singular character. So I don't think he's going to wear out, at least for me, he's not wearing like a type or a style out at all. Um, and and as far as him burning out on like just doing too much at once, so far it seems like that's the thing he's being really smart about, where he's just like, yeah, I'm not greenlighting anything until I feel like it's actually ready to be made. Like finish the script. Um, like let's have something ready before we decide we're gonna make it, which is where like Marvel, I just read yesterday. The people writing the script for Avengers Doomsday have been told like all right, you need to have this done by like March 5th. Whatever it is, it needs to be done by they're just greenlighting things and then going like we'll worry about like what it's supposed to actually be later. So I think James Gunn's being very smart about that. Like let's write these stories and then we'll decide that we want to make them once that part of it is finished.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Superman Legacy, which is coming out this year. Yeah, and yeah, trailer for it. We like the trailer. For Superman Legacy.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I think it feels like everything that has been missing from Superman for a long time in
Yeah.
movies.
Do you think out of most people who've had these type of positions there, maybe gets the comic books more than someone like I mean, you have Kevin Feige who I mean, he's worked on comic book films for a long time and seems like he's there. I mean, he was all the way back as a assistant there on X-Men or
Yeah, and he was even sneaking comics in onto the set to the actors because Bryan Singer like didn't want them reading the source material for whatever reason. Uh, I do think I mean Kevin Feige I think he's got a comic knowledge. He knows comics too. I think he worked as a with comics a little bit before working with movies later. So I think he's got a knowledge. I think Kevin Feige just got to such an executive level and then the output was increased so much that he just did physically was not capable of micromanaging projects anymore.
mm,
He just literally couldn't actually do personal quality control. I mean, when COVID was really delaying a lot of the projects, I've read about him sitting down and being able to like, wow, I actually feel like I have time to look at everything. So I'm going to review like the 5 episodes of this new Daredevil that have been made so far. And Kevin Feige hated what they'd made so much that he fired everyone involved and restarted production on that Daredevil series because he thought what they did was so bad. Like Karen and Foggy were killed off screen in a car accident before the start of the show. Like that's how like weird the decisions they were making were. So I think Kevin Feige knows what he's doing. I think it's just gotten so big that he can't be hands on anymore. And that is the benefit of James Gunn, not just being kind of in the middle executive, but actually being the CEO. He is the executive that is in charge. Like he's the suit that he has to get a green light from. Like he is the guy actually making that choice. So he's allowed to have to put his own stopgap in and say, we're not making too much at once. I have to be happy with this before it goes ahead. So I think that's what's going to make the difference. And I think, I've heard him say that superheroes are one of his favorite things that have ever been created, and
Mhm.
they're also the dumbest thing that ever happened. And I think being able to acknowledge the silliness of it and also love it and have a reverence at the same time, but without getting too up your own ass and taking it too seriously or thinking it's nothing but silly and stupid. There's a balance there that I think gives him a really good head for this.
Mm. Yeah, we'll see. James Gunn. We'll see if he continues this great streak he has being the head of DC. All right. So a strong tune in from you and a strong tune in for me for Creature Commandos streaming on Max right now there. A season 2 is going to be coming. And they do set up a season 2 at the end of this.